It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, April the 3rd. We'll call to order the Forest Lake Airport Commission meeting. Mr. Secretary, would you please take roll?
Mr. Dahlbeck.
Present.
Mr. Husnick.
Here.
Mr. Munson.
Here.
John Schmidt is here, and Mr. Steeler.
Present.
All present.
All right. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Or are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Just one correction. At the end of it, it looks like it's an old airport commission listed.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, we need to update the commission members on there.
Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt will get that taken care of. We'll note that as...
Okay, and with the correction, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the last meeting with the correction noted by
Mr. Munson.
Mr. Munson.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes with the correction.
I will second that.
And a second from Mr. Dahlbeck. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 No one opposed. That passes. Next on the agenda is a report from Bolton and Mink, and Silas Parmar is here this evening. So Silas, it's all yours.
Well, thanks for the time again. I think everyone's got a copy of the update memo here. So kind of something that we've been talking about for a couple meetings is kind of an approach to runway 1331. BMI worked with Mr. Ashbeck when he was on the commission to submit information to the FAA. And the contacts that we've spoken to with the FAA flight procedures is that their backlog is quite substantial, and now they're actually going through the backlog with kind of a fine-tooth comb to determine, which airports are actually going to get approaches or not. There's a number of airports, around the country where they have approaches to one end of the runway and they're looking for, an RNAV approach to the other side, where the FAA is starting to question whether or not it's worth their investment to putting the approach in on that side. And then after that, they're also looking at different categories of airports, like a Forest Lake with, shorter runway length, how effective is an RNAV approach going to be coming into a runway here. So it doesn't mean, they're not going to look into developing it, but it just may take some time. I mean, 2 to 3 year time frame is still, realistic based on where things are at. So it may fall off the update memo here until I hear anything more from our contacts at the FAA, but by all means, feel welcome to bring it up at any future commission meetings if I don't. So that's kind of the update on that front. Kind of something that, we talked about at the February commission meeting was about, state fiscal year 2020 projects. So come July 1, where things are at. The state was going through their budgeting process to try to first figure out, what the governor and Congress's budget is going to be. It's still not final yet, but they got a pretty good indication. So working with Mr. Undum, we revised the CIP based on what the commission here recommended for the hierarchy of projects to submit, hoping for funding in state fiscal year 20, which was the pavement rehab on the runway taxiway taxi lanes, the east taxi lane construction, and then the master plan and ALP. So MnDOT hasn't officially released their list of funded projects for state fiscal year 2020, but the list is finalized. They're close to just posting it on their website. So I spoke with Mr. Dan Berner, who's the regional engineer for the Forest Lake Airport in the state, and he told me that the only one of those 3 projects that MnDOT has allocated funding for on their green list is the runway taxiway and taxi lanes crack repair and seal coat. He said MnDOT, they assign a score to each project that's requesting state funds. The highest scoring projects are any safety improvements occurring at your airport, any improvements to a runway. Then there's pavement management would follow as third, and then there's everything else that kind of falls into a big pile. And that's what he said. The East Taxi Lane construction and the master plan update fell into the big pile of projects which don't score the highest because they're not essentially, super critical towards operation at the airport. They're more development things to for Forest Lake's case, he understands you want to attract more hangars here and you're kind of built out with your current layout. So I tried to kind of dig in a little bit more about, is there any possibility for some other projects around the state falling off and any one of those 2 projects moving up? And he's unable to say that at this point. So one thing Mr. Undum and I have talked about is still trying to get a CIP meeting with MnDOT to kind of hear from them saying, okay, well, if the East Taxi Lane project, knowing that that was the #1 priority, if there's no funds available in state fiscal year 20 for that, what does the city need to do for that project to get funding in 2021? Is it break it apart into 2 years to make it a smaller ask on the funding side? Kind of those types of things, so you can actually plan a little better going into next year. Otherwise, if you try the same process, it's unlikely to get funded in that front. And then, you know, unfortunately, because one Forest Lake project is greenlit, doesn't mean you can allocate those funds towards another. It's all based on their scoring system. So in the next couple months here, Mr. Undum will receive an email from MnDOT saying, we've allocated this much funding for your runway, taxiway, and taxi lane pavement rehab project. Are you going to accept the funds? So I'll pause before I get to the last item there about if the commission wants to move forward with the pavement management project in 2020 and see if there's any questions about the MnDOT process and how they allocate funds for projects.
Anybody have any questions?
No, other than the fact it looks like it kind of kills the whole project unless we can go ahead and build hangars prior to having the taxi lanes. That would be the only question.
And that's part of what we'll discuss, kind of, you know, I think we want to make sure that we get, you know, we don't have a hard no from MnDOT right now, but we also don't have a hard yes either. So we want to make sure that, I'd recommend kind of going down to make sure that MnDOT's either going to say, this project will never really ever meet a green lit classification unless they have a kind of an excess number of funds, and we'll kind of go back through and then retool our approach to the project. But if you remember back kind of going forward, the way this kind of started out was that if MnDOT cost participated, made it more financially achievable based on current budget and current, how we kind of structured that infrastructure fee. So we'd have to go back through, if MnDOT does say, you know what, we're not gonna have funding for this probably in the next 5 years, then we can have to make the decision on, do we wanna approach it at a modified, you know, kind of modify the plan set, or modify the approach to see if we can't make it financially feasible, this either through staging or through changes to how we actually design the project, that type of stuff. So I still think there's a couple of meetings that we need to have with MnDOT just to make sure, you know, that to kind of get where they're at with it, because if it just delays it out by say 12 months and they're saying this potentially has a option in 2021, it may be worthwhile just to say, okay, we'll do what we can, you know, before we get the funding commitment. But at this point, I would recommend, as Silas said, is just to go through one more kind of a confirmed meeting with MnDOT, get some of what they're looking at long range, get their buy-in or get their input, and then go back and retool it if we need to.
Okay.
When you say staging, you mean step by step on the project, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, if it's 1 year, if they wanted to split apart like South was saying
Right.
at one point, like infrastructure 1 year, paving the next year.
Yeah.
So it helps their budget cycles too.
Right,
you know,
that's
'cause
what
I
you
mean,
meant by staging, though.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, it's a $484,000 project. That's a big, you know, it's a relatively big project ask, you know, and if it's split out where if it's $280 a year or $200,000 a year, that may be more viable for them. I guess the good news out of the whole situation here is that, you know, when the runway was paved, there was always we always assumed that MnDOT would pay for the repair and maintenance of the runway, but it wasn't guaranteed. We do have a commitment here for that work, which helps out quite a bit. So that's the big one out of this list so far, is we do have a commitment for, or a perceived commitment for the seal coating and crack filling, which is a huge, you know, commitment from them.
And that, just to remind me, the crack seal and repair, how often does that need to be done?
Ideally, you do it every 3 years,
Okay.
because what you want to do is you want to protect the investment that the city made in constructing and paving the runway and the taxiway, and then also on the state side, they consider pavement maintenance a high priority for them as well, because they want to protect their investment in, you know, in the runway that they constructed as well. So if you can get them done every 3 years, it's ideal. I mean, now, as Mr. Undum said, with the state participating up at least 90%, you know, it helps offset the cost for the city. Otherwise, I could understand it might be a tough ask if you're asking for the full $170,000 to council.
And I believe that, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the local funding is already in place, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Correct, yeah, there's enough fund balance there to cover the local share, and that's when we looked at all three of these projects going forward. If all three, say, through some,
Yeah.
you know, miracle at MnDOT, all three got green lit, we would have fund balance available to cover all three. So yeah, we were able to cover the fund balance.
Yeah, the
local
other thing
share
too,
funding.
no matter what, I mean, we want to keep our foot in the door.
Correct.
That's really what it amounts to. So let's get I think the approach you're using is really good, Dan, and maybe there's some other ways we can do it, but
Yeah, so our hope is still, Mr. Undum asked for a CIP meeting in February with no response from MnDOT. Our hopes are is that after they've officially released their green list of funded projects, we can try to get a CIP meeting with them now so that the city has plenty of time to plan for next year. So kind of with that, I guess the next step would be is if the commission still does want to proceed with the pavement maintenance project on the runway, taxiway, and taxi lanes, this way allowing Mr. Undum to accept the funding as it arrives, and then we can work with the city to move forward with putting together the bidding documents and you know, when the time comes to get that project constructed.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely we'll move ahead with that. Do we need to make a motion or anything? We just need, Mr. Undum just needs to move that direction.
Yeah, when the list comes out, I'm assuming probably in, it's April, May's meeting, I'll bring forward kind of the package deal and we'll start the formal process. This is more of an informal, you know, when the list comes out, I let them know that we are interested and we'll take care of the formalities in the future.
Yeah, okay.
All right, with that, you know, the CIP is updated based on our comments from February, and then it also does, the pavement management program has been incorporated into the CIP. So you can see it's, you know, a 20-year CIP for the airport, but what we kind of focused based on our conversations of the February meeting was kind of the immediate kind of 5 years. You got to put a project on the CIP in order for MnDOT to even look at it, so it's good that the city has put a number of projects on there, and it's something that we can consistently evaluate. So if you guys have comments or thoughts on it, you know, outside of a commission meeting, feel welcome to email me or email them to Mr. Undum, and we can work on getting them on the CIP and developing a cost for them, because if you got time now to start evaluating it until February of 2020, you can actually pin down what you're proposing or doing. It goes a long way on MnDOT's side, where they know Forest Lake's serious about these projects, because we'll have to update it eventually based on what the green list says for East Taxi Lane project and the master plan and ALP. So something just to keep on the back of your mind. It can always be updated. And then kind of the last thing, so the Minnesota Airports Conference is coming up tail end of this month, April 24th through 26th, and in Wilmer. In the packet, you can kind of see an agenda of events. I know in past years, different members of Forest Lake have attended the conference, and just so everyone's on the same page, the registration fees for anyone part of the commission or city staff that does attend, it is reimbursable through the MnDOT maintenance and operations grant provided to the city each year. So I won't go through the agenda, but it just wanted to make sure you guys were aware of it in case anyone was interested in attending, even for all 3 days or just a day.
appreciate that very much.
Any other questions?
No, I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Next on the agenda is the hangar development list. I know it's been talked about whether we can make that public, so these folks can talk to each other and
So,
find out.
I did speak with the attorney and I asked, you know, what is it public information, is it private information? And the opinion of the city attorney was that it is public information, so I do have copies of the list. I can give them to anybody who makes a request for them. What I basically did is I put their rank 1 through, now we have 13 people on there, 1 through 13, the name is what I have. So if anybody wants to see a copy of it, it is public information, and I can distribute that to whoever wants to see a copy of the list.
So we do have 13 people, 13 interested parties on the list.
Yeah, one came in Tuesday, earlier this week, I can't remember what day it was, but there was a call.
Okay, that's great. Unfortunate we can't move forward on it. Anything else on the hangar development list? Anybody have any questions, thoughts, concerns? No? Next on the agenda, tractor usage. This is the John Deere.
Yep, well, if you don't mind, I'll address it, if you
Yes.
don't mind, Don. I brought it up last time because I simply wanted taxpayers to know the amount of money that the state of Minnesota has given to the city of Forest Lake and for buying equipment. It's about what it amounts to. And that, you know, 1997, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $44,000. 2013, it was $87,000 and change. And I'm just not sure that the public is aware of that, and other folks are aware of that. And
When
Whether-
you say this, the state has given us this money, they've given us this money specifically for the airport.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it was for buying the equipment.
Right,
okay?
for maintaining.
And,
the
you know,
airport.
and I've talked, you know, if you talk to the state of Minnesota, they're gonna tell you, well, that stuff's supposed to stay at you know, at the airport and all that kind of stuff. Talking to Dave Adams, you know, we discussed all this, and I said, I just wanted this number out there so everybody knows
Right.
what's been going on. And as far as the usage, I mean, there's equipment that goes back and forth and that kind of thing. And so that argument would have to be in with the state of Minnesota. But as far as I'm concerned, what I wanted to make sure of is the fact that people know the benefit from the airport. And it's been in the neighborhood of $123,000. So that's the only reason I brought that up.
No, I think
just
it-
wanted to
it-
clarify that, so.
Yeah, it needs to be heard,
And-
absolutely.
And I think, as far as I'm concerned, it should have been included in our, you know, when we're trying to figure out this runway thing too, and you know, what.
Show up as
our-
some kind of a credit on the
As some
on
kind
the
of a
sheet,
credit
on
or
the
something,
income
right.
statement, yeah.
So I'll keep the conversation going and make sure that everybody knows what's happening there, so.
Yep.
Appreciate the time.
No, I appreciate it. That's all the set items we had on our agenda. Does anybody have anything they wanted to add to the agenda?
I just have a couple of housekeeping
Yeah,
items, if
sure.
you don't mind. So recently, we went through, staff received some prior years tie-down money and some money from the beverage fund out at the hangar building that we've receipted and placed into the airport fund. Part of that receipting process, we kind of looked at it and wanted to make sure that for accounting's and audit perspective, that we're making sure that we're doing the procedurals right for if we're buying beverages for the beverage fund that's out there. So we just need kind of a procedure for if pop or water, whatever is in the fridge out there for sale, we just need to make sure that we get receipts for it and have somebody who's in charge, kind of a point person for collecting the funds. It's more for audit's sake, so if somebody comes in and says, where these revenues come from, we can offset them with a receipt. That being said, that's if the funds that are generated there are, if the commission wants those to go to the airport general fund. If it's more of just a, you know, kind of a nicety for, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is if you guys want to do it kind of on your own fruition and not necessarily involve the city accounting, that's okay. But if you want the money that's there kind of more procedurally to go to the airport fund, so we're trying to use it as a fundraiser for the airport fund. There's kind of a list of procedures that need to be followed in terms of receipting, documenting it all. Right now, there's a cash balance in there of $43 that was left in it to kind of start that fund. So if somebody wants to purchase the next, and again, I don't know what's in there. So if it's Coke products or Pepsi products, but whatever type of pop products there, we need to show the receipting from that. And what we would ask is that they come in on a quarterly basis so we can just make sure that we're keeping track of all the receivables on the pop fund. Recommendation would be, I'm assuming it's probably low, it's probably minimal amounts of capital coming in. Recommendation would be that you guys probably, if it's just kind of a nicety for pilots, maybe just kind of take that and just use that as kind of a self-sustaining thing and don't necessarily use it as a fundraiser for the airport because it's gonna be less work on staff to go through and receipt $20 and $20 worth of.
Do you need a motion to that effect? You don't need a motion to that effect.
I at this point, no, I mean, I'll bring back the formal on,
The other issue I wanted to bring up with is kind of the whole thing's you're on your honor.
Yeah.
You know,
Right,
so
right, right.
the accounting is gonna be pretty tough there.
That's the other aspect of it too, where it's one of those things where if we, you know, if you spend $20 worth of pop and nobody buys something, you know, it becomes a pretty big paperwork issue
Yeah.
for us to go
Right.
through. Second thing as part of that, when this one I would recommend that still maintains and goes to the airport fund is the tie-down revenue that we have for if somebody rents a tie-down space out there. I think currently it's kind of, again, on your honor system, if somebody comes in, ties down, I believe it's $2 a night, they just throw it in the box in the arrival departure building. And, you know, no issue with the process at this point. It's just, we don't get those receipts until, we want those quarterly, again, so we can just kind of track what the usage is and.
You're saying you want that treated the same as the pop and just leave it off the books?
No, we
Tie-down.
want that
You want the
one, yeah,
tie-down.
that one, there's a fee schedule associated with it, so there is a
Okay.
fee associated with it. So we're gonna develop a slip of paper, so somebody comes in, they can write down,
Yeah.
you know, I was here for 2 nights. And there has in the past, somebody's thrown in a $50 bill and just donated the rest to the airport fund, which is okay. We just need to have, on a quarterly basis, we're not just getting, you know, on an annual basis, having to go back and recreate the whole, you know,
I would think
receiving.
that would be pretty simple.
Is Rick, the airport manager, handling all that right now? Because I think he handles the pop, does he not?
Well, he used to, but he's pretty much retired.
Yeah, and this is all part of the transition now, so this is part of,
Okay.
you know,
That's,
All
gonna-
right.
that's gonna change.
I mean, there was also, some fly-in donation money too. Was that part of that?
that was all receipted, it's all in the airport fund at this point, so when it hit our safe, we all receipted it all in, so all that's documented, it's receipted, it's in the airport fund, and I believe the total, it went back a number of years, I don't remember the
Right, I mean, it was
actual
only
number
a
of
couple,
years.
$300, wasn't it?
I think the total between tie-down money, beverage money, and flying money was right around 1,200.
Oh, was
and
it?
some, so there was quite a bit, but that's through all three, you know, funds, and, you know, I don't know what the breakdown was, how much came in on pop beverage sales or tie-down sales.
I think the pop generates about $100 a year.
Yeah. So for the amount of work at a staff level to try to track that $100 work, it's probably easier just to have it
At
as an
$100
on-run
staff work,
system.
yeah.
Yeah, right,
You know, if you guys want to manage that yourselves, that's the recommendation there. But for the tie downs, we do have a fee schedule associated with that, so we just need somebody designated for on a quarterly basis just to go collect it out of the box and then bring it to the city hall, and we'll receipt, we'll take care of the accounting side of it.
Okay, that'll get taken care of.
Do you have, I mean, does Dave or anybody from the city go in and inspect the AD building at all, or clean anything, or?
Take the
I know we
worms out.
requested for carpet cleaning here.
Yeah, take the worms out.
It's like a war zone in there?
Oh, last fall?
You know what, I think we're gonna have somebody that's gonna be doing that. Just kinda working on that. To look at it, you know, once a week or so, whatever, and go in there and take care of that, so. I think that's gonna be, I'll report back next month on it, for sure.
So we have historically, if we've been asked, like in the past year, if there's been a known issue out there, I have talked to building maintenance here and said, hey, can we go out there and take a look? Like with the worms issue last fall, they did go out and take a look at,
Yeah, I know
you
they
know,
did.
and seeing that. So I mean, we are responsive, but I guess we're not proactive, we're more at the reactive stage at this point in terms of, that's how we've historically handled
Maybe
it.
at the door.
Well, John, you're in there pretty often, aren't you?
There's a whole, yeah, I'm studying for the instrument rating in there. And I went in last fall and there were worms all over the floor. They come in through a little, there's a seal on the, you know, the main door where you come in with a lock on it, and then there's the other door too. There's a little space there that I think they're coming in through. I think they want to get in there because of the warmth last fall. You know, it started getting cold and they crawled in. And I'm not complaining. I mean, we just need to fix the seal, that's all. You know, there's a lot of little things. I took the gas ladder the other day and crawled up to the light fixture. If you look at the light fixtures, they're full of bugs. And so I tried to take the plate off of there. You can't believe how difficult it is to take those things off there. If I was just gonna leave them in and go turn the lights off and go in with my hand and, you know, take a wet paper towel and wipe them out of there. I didn't do that yet. I gotta still do that. There's a lot of little things.
Sounds to me like there needs to be some repair work done on that door.
That door, yeah, just a little seal on the bottom of the door. And then we talked about putting another combination lock on there, so if one combination lock doesn't work, you can get into the other one too. We talked about that a couple years ago, we never did that. That's a low priority. But it'd be nice if we did.
Tie downs, while we're talking about tie downs, they should probably be hit with some paint or something so somebody can see them.
Yeah.
Because right now, I mean, you'd never know they're out there.
Yeah.
And I've painted them a couple times at that fluorescent orange
Yeah,
paint, and it doesn't last.
Oh, no, it's only gonna last the year, the summer, you know, but,
When we poured them, we painted them too right away, but right now they're not even usable, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's so
well,
wet.
it's just so wet out there.
Yeah, somebody got stuck out there.
I pulled a 182 out of the mud the other day.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, because he
No,
was
I
trying to go with the
I
tie
understand what
downs.
you're talking about, that should happen though, it should be marked somehow.
And, I mean, if someone wants to get the paint, I'll go out there with it and paint them, but.
It's gotta be done every year
so,
because it does go
It
away.
needs to be done, yeah, because they're, you know, you gotta dig around for
I
them.
agree.
Yeah. Anything else to be added or discussed? What?
Pappies?
Pappies?
Yeah,
Are
I
they-
flew in last Tuesday,
Which runway did you fly in?
1-3.
And weren't working?
They were not working at all, yeah.
Yeah, I know I don't even try them anymore, so I don't know if they're working. I should just to know, but it's been intermittent on them.
It has.
So I guess whoever the installer of those should know that, and I'll make a point of trying them out when I come in.
Well, but if they're not working, we should have a notum out there too, that they're not working.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's probably the right thing to do.
They were working last Thursday night, Wednesday night. What day did you try using them?
Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it's hit or miss.
Because I know these guys got home from Florida that they were working on 1-3. Wonder what the deal is. Well,
Let's try it a few more times and see what happens, see how consistent it is or isn't.
we could certainly have a NOTAM done and get somebody out there to find out what's going on.
Yep. Anything else?
Thanks, Kurt.
Yep.
Anybody from the audience? Any comments, thoughts? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
One motion to, any second?
Second.
Seconded by Kurt. We have, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I
No one's opposed. That motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.
So did you get your